Mrs. CP here. Today I'm going off my normal route and not doing something really healthy. And when you see me make this recipe, you understand why it's not really that healthy. But today I'm going to make pastizzis. And if you haven't grown up in Detroit or you don't have a Maltese background, you're probably thinking, what the heck is a pastizzi? And basically it's a kind of like a puff pastry type savory ball of goodness. It's the only way I can describe it. A lot of people refer to them as a savory cheesecake. There is no cream cheese in it, but in Malta they eat them for like breakfast with a little bit of sugar sprinkled on them, and eat them as snacks, and they're so good. And I grew up on these. My grandfather was Maltese, and so it was like the big thing in our family was pastizzis. And there was places in Detroit and that you could buy them, but since I moved down to the south, I can't find them anywhere. So I took it upon myself to try to make them. And so you're gonna follow along with me, and hopefully you enjoy it. Excuse me. Hopefully you enjoy this recipe and you try to give it a try. It is kind of labor intensive for the dough, but it is so worth it in the long run. So I'm going to bring you down and I'm going to show you guys how to make pastizzis. So for the pastizzi dough, you're going to need some pretty basic ingredients. You're going to need a little bit of oil. You're going to need ice cold water, flour, and a little bit of salt. That's all you really need. And I've already got my oil in here, so I'm just going to add some of my flour in. And you want to sift your flour. And you can do this by hand. I wouldn't recommend, the only way I would recommend doing this dough is either by hand or in a mixer with a dough hook. So I'm just going to slowly add in some of my water, a little at a time. And all you're really looking for is, once you've got everything combined in, is you're gonna let it just go until everything comes up onto the dough hook and your bowl becomes clean. And I will bring you back when we get to that point. Okay guys, so my dough has been in the mixer for about 5 minutes now, and as you can see, it's pulled everything out of the sides and the bowl is pretty much completely clean and all the dough is on the hook. So now I'm just going to turn it off. I'm going to check it for its consistency, and it's not sticky. That's what you want. You don't want it really sticky. So give me a minute to set up and I'll show you the next step. Okay guys, so I'm just going to spray down my surface with a little bit of oil just so it makes it easier. And you're just going to want to knead this for a little bit. And pastizzi dough, you can use, if you want pastizzis, you can use the like the phyllo dough. But growing up eating pastizzis, my mom has made them with the phyllo dough a couple times when I was up there visiting, and it's not the same. There's just something about the homemade dough that just gives it that extra yumminess factor. So all I want to do is just kind of roll it into a ball and just kind of grab from the top, pulling it into the bottom. And if you are on a diet, this dough probably isn't for you. Let me grab a plate real quick. And what you're going to do next, once you've kneaded your dough and formed it into a ball, is you're going to want to take some Crisco. Yes, I said Crisco, y'all. And you're just going to rub the entire thing up with Crisco. Just give it a nice, good slather of it. Make sure it's completely coated. And I have to wipe my hands off now, because you're going to want to wrap it in plastic wrap. You do not want to wrap this in foil because it'll turn the dough like a brownish color. So definitely wrap it in plastic wrap. And you're not waiting for it to rise or anything like that, because you guys know how much I love waiting for bread to rise. You're going to want to refrigerate this dough for about 2 hours so it gets nice and cold for the next step in it. That's one of the key things with making pastizzi dough is the temperature of the dough. It's got to be cold. But I'm fighting with my plastic wrap, which I always do. I'm just going to want to give it a good wrapping. You're going to set that in the fridge for about 2 hours. So when I am ready to start stretching the dough, I will bring you guys back. But doesn't it look pretty already? Okay guys, so my dough has been in the fridge for about 2 hours and it's pretty cold. I'm working with half at a time because you're going to need a lot of space to roll this out, because you're going to want to have to stretch it and roll it and stretch it and roll it and stretch it and roll it. So all I'm going to do is roll it out. And then before I forget, while my dough was in the refrigerator, I pulled some butter out of the refrigerator to sit at room temperature, and then I just mixed it in with some shortening. And it's basically, there's no real exact measurement. It's pretty much 3 parts shortening to 1 part butter. And you don't want to have like the butter completely melted. You want to have a little bit of the chunks of butter in there, because we're going to end up using that on the dough. So all you're going to want to do is just keep stretching it out. Because you're going to want to get this really, really, really thin. So once you've got everything completely stretched out, really, really thin, you're going to want to take your shortening and butter mixture. I'm just making sure I don't have any more like super large chunks of butter in there. And you're going to want to put your mixture on the dough. And here comes the fun part. If you have really, really big chunks, just squish them up with your fingers. There's no need to be clean here. And you're going to want to put a really good coating of this mixture onto your bread. And what you're going to do is you're going to start at one end and you're going to start to roll it. And as you're rolling it, you're going to want to stretch it some more. So you're basically going to roll this entire thing up into one big log. Okay guys, I've got my dough all rolled into a big huge log. So all I'm going to do now is just kind of pinwheel it and stick it on a plate. And guess what? Give it another coat of Crisco. So I'm going to cover this in some plastic wrap and stick it back in the refrigerator for about another hour or so. So when it is ready, I'll bring you back and show you what goes in the filling. I'm doing a cheese filling today. There are tons of different types of fillings that you can use in pastizzis. I am just a fan of the cheese filling, and so that's what I'm going to be making today. But I will the link in the description with the measurements for the dough and everything. I'll have a couple other recipes for other fillings as well. So I will bring you back when we are ready to make the filling and start making our pastizzis. Alright, so my dough has been in the refrigerator for about an hour, so now we're going to make the filling. Yay! All I have in this bowl right here is some ricotta cheese. It's just one container of ricotta cheese. I'm just going to add a little bit of salt and 1 egg. And you're just going to combine that together. So now that I've got my ricotta cheese all mixed together, I'm going to take my dough and I'm just kind of unroll it a little bit. And I'm just going to cut it into some slices. And then you're just going to take your dough and you're going to just kind of play with it a little bit and flatten it out. The easiest way to fill these is take your thumb and your forefinger and make a little circle. Take a little bit of your filling and then just fold it over and then just give it a little pinch. And then stick it on a non-stick surface. And you also want to have your oven preheating to 425 degrees. So I'll show you again. Just play with it. You can lay it on the table and flatten it out, but to prevent it from sticking, I prefer just to do it in my hands. There you go. It looks kind of like a little ravioli. So I'm going to finish making these up and I will bring you back when I'm ready to pop them in the oven. Okay guys, so I have filled some of my pastizzis up. I'm getting ready to pop them in the oven. They're going to go in the oven at 425 for about 20-30 minutes until they are like a dark golden brown. So when they come out, I will show you what they look like. Hopefully they turned out well. Okay guys, so while my first batch are baking, that's probably all that I'm gonna bake today because I think that's all I can consume myself. But because the dough is such a time-consuming thing, I always make more and I freeze them. And the way that I freeze them is I get a pan and I just line it with some freezer paper. And when I make them, I put them on the pan with the freezer paper and I pop them in the oven pop them in the freezer that way so they can freeze that way. And then once they're completely frozen, I can put them in a freezer safe bag or a Tupperware container or something like that so they don't lose their shape. But you don't want to freeze them after they've been baked. You want to freeze them before they've been baked, and then you can just pop them out of the freezer and throw them in the oven and enjoy them anytime you want, which is my goal. So I'm just going to pop them on there and stick these ones in the freezer, and I'll bring you back when the ones in the oven are done. Okay guys, so I just pulled my pastizzis out of the oven and I am so excited to try them. And basically what they look like is they're like a little puff pastry type with the filling. So I let them cool down a little bit and it's been driving me nuts. All I wanted to do was just taste them. So let's see how they taste. So freaking good. And it's so flaky. It's a little messy, but it's okay. The filling inside, I mean, they're referred to as a savory cheesecake, and a lot of people that try pastizzis for the first time, just from reading the description, they're expecting something sweet, but they're savory. And there's so many different fillings. You can do the spicy pea filling, you can do a meat filling, you can do a spinach filling. So good. So I encourage you guys to try this recipe, even if you're not Maltese or you haven't grown up with them. They're awesome. And if you don't want to make the dough, you can cheat and use the phyllo dough too. That works too, but it's not the same. Sorry, I can't stop eating. They're good. So that is what I've got for you guys today. So be sure to subscribe and follow us on Facebook, and happy prepping.